the thing that we're going to start with is like, what's an AI agent? We're going to very quickly go through what's an AI agent. What do we mean by AI agent? How do you build these AI agents? Where do you get started? And then we will see how different sort of patterns are used in building these AI agents. And from that, you should be able to grok, again, a bunch of things. You're the first ones. Hopefully this works. If it's not working well, please let me know. Again, please ask questions and do that. Oops. We can just say play. Fantastic. Can you guys see my screen, Louis? Looking at you. Fantastic. Okay, so look, this term AI agent has all kinds of connotations. Different people mean different things. For the purpose of what we're going to talk about today and how you guys should think of these, is an AI agent is one or more of these things we call workflows. It has a start, it has an end, and it has a bunch of things that happen in between that start and end. We call these things blocks, and you connect these blocks, and that's what we're going to be doing here. Okay. And again, you can have one or multiple of these workflows in a single AI agent. We'll talk about that. These AI agents are built using, we call it the agent builder, the Mind Studio agent builder. It's this web-based design system that allows you to put these blocks on a screen, connect them together, and configure them. The process of building an AI agent is really straightforward. You put these blocks together on this canvas in these workflows, and so you build it, and as you're building it, you're making a bunch of decisions of what blocks you're putting on it and how they're configured, etc. Then you test it. And then sometimes you test it and you find, oh, it's not working. You go back and you modify the build. And so you kind of go back and forth on building and testing. And when you're happy with it, you hit the publish button and you publish it. And that's what gives you the AI agent. You build it, test it, publish, voila, you get an AI agent. Each AI agent that you publish has a unique URL, right? A unique web address. And so because of that, you can point any web browser from your laptop or your desktop, from your computer, you can load any AI agent, or from a mobile device, right? Because mobile devices load URLs as well. Or you can call that AI agent via APIs. Can I get a show of hands of how many people have called anything with an API before and know it? Okay, whoops, wrong screen. Okay, cool. And so we'll touch upon that in the future. Don't be scared of any of this stuff, by the way. None of this that I'm going to cover today is going to be super technical at all. All of you can grok it, I promise. Some of you might struggle a little bit in certain places, but we're going to get you there. That's the whole point of, this exercise that we're doing. So these AI agents can do all kinds of things, right? And a good way to see the kinds of things they can do is to go and look at, kind of this block listing that we have in the builder. And so I'm just going to quickly go through it. So they can generate text. So they can, the proper term is call a large language model and ask that large language model to come back with a response. We call that generate text. They can also call image models and give those image models a prompt. And those image models will then return back an image, actually specifically a URL to a hosted image, but an image. They're going to generate an image. You can call models to generate videos or generate charts or generate other types of assets that we'll cover if we've got time here, like HTML pages or PDFs. And so you can use Mind Studio to create agents that generate PDFs. What does that mean? Well, what can you do with a PDF? Countless things. You can create sales collaterals. You can create study guides. You can create anything that's structured using PDFs or HTML. And so these models can do that. You can analyze images. You can get a user to give you an image, and then you can send that image to a model and get the model to analyze the image and return back what's in the image. And return back text. So you give it an image and it returns back text, an evaluation of what's in the image. You can have a model generate text. Okay, so there's lots of things that it can do. And again, as you look through these blocks, once you start building, you'll see that it can connect to all kinds of other services. Google, it can send email or SMS messages or Slack notifications. It can connect to various social media services. Again, all of this is like extraordinarily powerful. The ability to search, I'm not sure you want to search Twitter anymore, but the ability to search Twitter or YouTube or other services and to be able to understand what's happening there. Like if you're trying to sell things and you're trying to figure out like what's in fashion, what's in style, where's the world going, what's the world thinking, what's the world searching for? Well, you can actually figure that out by connecting your agent to these services and having your agent do the searching and do what's called social listening. Extraordinarily powerful, right? And also, for those of you that know what these are other automation platforms that we often find people pairing Mind Studio with. These are very powerful platforms that allow you to connect to thousands of different other applications and also create workflows. But in these kinds of cases, the workflows from Make or N8N or Zapier can call Mind Studio agents, and then Mind Studio agents can also trigger these workflows. This is an automation that works really well. We're really not going to cover it today, but if you ever wanted to learn how to do it, it's actually really straightforward. A lot of people do it. Okay, so let's take a look at building a simple agent, and then we'll go from there. And so the agent we're going to build is going to be really, really simple. It's going to be a poet. Okay, and the poet is going to have this little text area here. It says, what should the poem be about? And then once you type something in and say next, it's going to write us a poem. Okay. And so let me, switch screens here. And so now I'm in the, Mind Studio interface, app.mindstudio.ai. If we go to build, and then we say create agent, we get this interface right here. And the only thing we're going to do here is we're going to give this agent a name, and I'm going to say poet, okay? And I'm going to say poet 2 because I already made a poet. Although I could still call it poet. We don't restrict you from calling the multiple applications the same name. But here I'll call it poet 2. I can upload an icon. I'm not sure I've got any icons here to upload, but we could quickly go and, because why not? Let's show you how to do the entire thing. I like flat icon right here. And so we could say poet, and then this looks great. And then we can say, download this ping. We're just going to do the free download. That's going to get us the download. And then we can just go here and then choose downloads. There's poet and say open. And so now we've got an icon for our poet. We can just close this now. And so here, the first thing we're going to do, remember, is we want to create this form field here and say, what should the poem be about? And we do that by creating what's called a user input. So we can just say plus, and then right here say user input. Okay? And that creates this thing right here for user input. My screen is behaving weirdly. Can you guys still see me? Is this a network thing? This is spinning for some reason.
We can see your screen.
Okay, cool. I wonder if it's the keynote that's driving thing, but it doesn't matter. Okay, here you go. User input. I'm going to say plus and then say create new. And here, some of you may have never seen these screens before. I'm not sure. I don't think we've taught them actually in our master classes before, but this is a common pattern where you create things, again, that have these front-end interfaces that have screens and forms, and these are user inputs. And so here I'll quickly show you that, keep an eye on the right-hand side. You can create form fields that are like text areas or text input fields that are, smaller, or multiple choice. And again, you can add more and more of these multiple choice things, or image multiple choice. And so you can create grids of images, for example, that are multiple choice, or things that have rating scales, or file upload controls. And so you can upload a file. Here, we're just going to say this long text. And we're going to call this long text, what should we call it? Topic, right? This is the topic of the poem. So this is the variable name. We're going to store what people type into this field right here. We're going to store that in a variable called topic. And here we're going to prompt them to say, what should the poem be about? Okay. And here we can sort of give additional placeholder text if we want or anything else. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say done. So we can just close this tab here. And so now we've got the beginnings of our agent. We just got one form field. By the way, if we wanted to add another form field, we would just hit plus. We'll do that in the next demo that we do. And then you can add many form fields. You're just building a form here. Okay, and so now we have a variable called topic, and I'm going to click plus, and then I'm going to say generate text. Generate text is kind of the most popular block in Mind Studio because it allows you to call a language model, call an LLM. Okay. And you can call over 90 models. The default here is Claude 3.5 Haiku. Now, you can actually change the default for each agent by going over here to model settings and choosing a different model to be default, or for anywhere that you are, in every block that calls the model, you can just change it here. I'm going to leave this at 3.5 Haiku for this demo here. But again, sorry, one more time here. So models from Amazon, many from Anthropic, Cohere, DeepSeek, Google, Meta, Mistral, OpenAI, Perplexity, Grok. Chances are, if you've heard their names, we've got them here. And for you to change the model, you just hover over it and say use. And now you've changed the model for this call. Again, we'll do that in the next demo. And here, what we're going to say is write a poem about, and then in double curly braces, I'm going to make my screen larger, these double curly braces, okay? Not the square braces, not these, but double curly braces, these curly braces, whoops, about, we're going to say topic, the variable we just created. Okay. And then this says display to user. And I'm going to leave this at display to user, but then I'll show you another pattern that's commonly used, which is not to display this to user, to save it to a variable, and then later display it to user. But for now, I'm just going to say display to user. So again, just refreshing what we've done here. We created a user input that allows us to type in some text. We're going to call that text topic of the poem. And then we're going to send that to a model, and we say write a poem about, and then we're going to inject, it's called inject this variable. We're going to inject the topic. Okay, and here I can go to preview, and I can say open draft agent. Oops, loading display, please try again. Weird. Should be no error loading my draft agent. Here we go. Okay, by the way, if you see an error, say okay, refresh. Periodically models hiccup. This happens not all the time, less and less so, but look, here it has happened to us. Okay, what should the poem be about? Well, like all good poems, it should be about love and loss, I guess, right? But you can write better poems. And then we're going to say next, and that then is going to send that to a model, and it's going to say, here's a poem about love and loss, and it calls it Echoes of What Was. I'm going to make this again bigger. And here we get a poem. Okay, so super simple, right? So far, you guys with me? Can I get thumbs up? Did everybody understand that so far? That was pretty easy? Okay, let's go back and review it. Like, what's happening here? So we created a user input, and then we filled out that user input, and we hit next, and then that took the variable we created here, sent it, and we got the poem. Now, if we, again, look at it more like a picture, this is what we did, right? We created the form field. That form field, when we hit next, created this variable topic. We then took that variable topic and injected it into this next step, which was to generate the text. And we used these double curly braces. And then that called the model. And then the model came back with a result, and we stored, or we didn't store that in the result yet. We just displayed it, right? And there it is. And so again, if we said love and lost, and we hit next, what is the value of topic after we hit next? The value of topic is whatever was typed in here. The value of topic is love and lost. And so when we say, write a poem about double curly braces topic, what actually gets sent to the model is write a poem about, and then this thing here gets replaced. So the model never sees double curly braces topic, the model that gets called. What the model sees is write a poem about love and loss. And then the model comes back with a result, and that result is the poem. And again, if we had a variable called poem, it would say, this would be the poem that was written by the model. Okay, still the same? You guys get it? I'm just dumbing it down even more of like this is what this thing is. It's replacement of variables when you do this. So the model never sees, double curly braces topic, the model sees write a poem about love and loss. Okay. Now, when we create variables, like actually we didn't do this yet, but let's do that. Let's go back to our workflow here. Let me make it a bit smaller. And so remember what we did here, we created the user input, we called a model. And then here in the models, in the generate text block setting, we said output behavior is display to user. I'm going to change that and I'm going to say save to variable. And so now I'm going to save this to a variable and I'm going to call that variable poem. And now what we've done is we've gotten the information from the user, we called the model, and we sent along with it, write the poem about, and then this got replaced by whatever they typed in here. And then the result, instead of displaying it to the user, we're actually just saving the result to the variable poem. Now, what do you think will happen if I run this right now? Well, let's try it. Okay, and we're going to say open draft agent, and then we're going to say love and loss, and then we're going to say next. And this thing is calling the model. You can see it here. And then it says completed successfully with no output, right? Why? Because all it did was it saved it to a variable called poem. If we want to get the output out of that, we could add another block here called display content. And display content allows us to display content. So we could say, here is the poem. And then here we could say poem. Again, double curly braces are your friend. I'll make this a bit larger so you guys can see it, right? So we saved this to a variable, the response to the model. We saved it to a variable called poem, and then we're using the display content block to display to the user the poem. And we added some text here, right? And so now, again, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to say open draft agent. We're going to see, by the way, you can have other topics for your for your poems instead of love and loss. And so again, you can see this thing happening here, and here's the poem. That's what we said for it to say, here's the poem. And then it too came back with, here's a poem about love and loss, right? Why? Because it doesn't know in the display block that we've already said, here's the poem. It just came back with the poem because that was already gotten. Now, here we get to start seeing some best practices. So models have a tendency of doing things like this, of like saying, here's the thing you asked for. But we don't want that, right? We just want the poem. And so we can go to this block where we say, write a poem about this, right? And then here we can say, return only the poem and nothing else or no other text. Like all of this works, nothing else, okay? And so periodically you need to give, this is prompt engineering, these kinds of nudges to the model saying, hey, I just want the poem. I don't want any of your narrative here, okay? Okay, cool. So now we've got a thing that writes a poem. Now, but the thing is, this thing isn't styled in any way, right? It's really hard to read. And so we're going to talk about that next. So let's go back to here. Yeah, so we've been running these things. You may have seen, as I've been saying, open draft agent, but there's another way to run these, and this is how we do it internally here. We almost never open the draft agent. We run these things in the debugger. And so in the debugger, this is asking us for any launch variables here. We don't need any launch variables. We can say run. Oh, this one's got a user input, so not the best one to run in a debugger. We will come back to this. Sorry, I should have given you a different example. We'll come back to running things in debugger. For now, we're going to stick with running these things in draft mode. But if we were running them in debugger, we also get to see these things happening as the topic gets set to love and loss. Write a poem about love and loss, and you get this. Okay. Actually, sorry, I can show you that. Let's go look at our debugger, which we can find right here, and we can see the prior runs. Okay. And so let me make this a bit smaller. And so we can see the prior run here. Oh, we never ran it and published. Sorry, I'm confusing you all. Forget all of this stuff, rewind. Ignore the last 2 minutes as I'm struggling here to remember when to show you the debugger. I told you guys we're going to be guinea pigs. Apologies. So we've got our thing here of doing the poem about love and loss. Now let's look at being able to add calling multiple models from a single workflow, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to update our model to call our agent to call 2 models. One is going to be GPT-4o, and the other one's going to be Claude 3 Sonnet, and then we're going to display them together. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add another block over here to call another model. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go back to here, and we're going to go to our main flow here. And again, we're getting the user input. We're going to call the model. Here I said we were going to call OpenAI 4o, and so I can scroll down or I can search, and I can find, let's call 04 Mini. It's a great model, and we can say use model. So now we're calling, on this step, we're going to call 04 Mini. And then we're going to move this over a little bit, and we're going to create another generate text block. And here we're going to call another model. Let's leave it at like 3.5 haiku. So here we're going to call 04 Mini. Here we're going to call 3.5 haiku. And in fact, the prompt we're going to give to the second one is going to be this exact same prompt here. Write a poem about this topic, return only the poem and nothing else. And here we're going to say save to variable. And let's call this poem Claude. And so this poem was generated by Claude. And this poem, we're going to say is just poem, right? Or you could have said poem GPT. And so in our display block, let's write 2 things. Here's the poem by GPT. And then here we're going to go down and we're going to say, here's the poem by Claude. That's Anthropics, right? And here in double curly braces, we're going to add this poem Claude. You guys still with me? Yeah? Is anybody confused other than my confusion of all this debugger nonsense for you guys now? Everybody still with me? Can I get thumbs up? I'm looking at more grids. Yeah? Okay. I don't see any faces that are overly confused. Okay, awesome. So again, what did we do? User input. We're going to call 04 Mini, and we're going to store that in a variable called poem. We're going to call 3.5 haiku with the same prompt. We're going to store it in a variable called poem Claude. And then we're going to use a display content block, and we're going to say, here's the poem by GPT and the poem, and here's the poem by Claude and the poem. Okay? And again, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say preview, open draft agent. And now I get this, and we're going to stick with love and loss, and we're going to say next. So this thing is calling the first model. You saw that background image. This thing is calling the second model. And now this is what we got. I'm going to make it bigger. Here's the poem by GPT. Here's the poem by Claude. Now, again, these things aren't formatted, so they're not very good to read at all. That's what we're going to do next. But here's the poem from GPT, and here's the poem from Claude. Okay. Now, if you were actually trying to do these things, you wouldn't make it in this way, meaning to make an agent that simply calls one model to write a poem, then calls another model, and then displays these things. We have a really powerful tool over here called Profiler. Okay, so again, you can find that you're usually in this Automations tab, but if you look over here, there's a tool called Profiler. Profiler allows you to send the same prompt to multiple models simultaneously and get output, right, without having to create an entire agent to do it. And so here we can say 04 mini, and here we can leave this at 3.5 haiku, and we can just type write a poem about love and loss. And then we can say go, and we can watch them write their poem about love and loss here. And so we get to see this response from the model. This one got there faster. As you can see, 7,900 milliseconds versus 8,900 milliseconds. We can see how much it cost from a token standpoint. This one was much less expensive. And then you can sort of compare them on quality, which one you like as a poet. In my experience, Claude is a much better poet, better writer than GPT, and GPT might be a better analyst. Okay, cool. Now let's stay in here. And again, we got this poems, we got these two poems, that's cool. But the problem here is that they're not styled, and so it's hard for us to see any styling. One thing we can do is we can tell the models, when we send them a prompt, we can say use something called Markdown. Okay, and you can say use Markdown or use Markdown for formatting. Both of these work, okay? And so when we do that, let's go ahead and again preview and open this draft agent and run it again. Love and loss. We're going to see what happens if you ask the model to use Markdown for formatting. Show of hands, has anyone heard of Markdown? Has anybody used Markdown? Very few, right? Okay. So Markdown is an internet standard, sort of like HTML. It's something that's used for formatting. Now, this is not the way that we wanted it to format. And so I think it's because I said here for formatting, but you can say use Markdown in this way. Sometimes it will encapsulate it for you and do it in that way. So we can do it here. And again, let's go ahead and do it here as well. Or that might just be GPT-4 that's doing it in that way. Let's try this. Oh, sorry. Here I hit publish. That's another way you can do it. So you can hit publish and you can open the agent, or we've been previewing it in draft mode. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. I'm just going to open it up in draft mode again. And we're going to say love and loss. And then we're going to do it. So again, we're kind of slowly making our way through. We created a user input. We called a model. We got result back. We called two models. We got results back. We put them together. And now we're going to show that you can format these things using Markdown. And then later I'll show you how to format these things using HTML. So you see, now we get bolded text here, and we get love echoes. And then, but here, here's the poem by Claude, and here's the poem by GPT are not formatted and are here. Maybe that's not the way that we want to do it. Okay, let's go back to our example here. And again, let's look through it. This is the no formatting that I'm showing you. Here's how we format it with Markdown. And so we've already formatted these things with Markdown by saying, use Markdown here. But we didn't format these things in the display content. But we can. Again, we can go back to here. And we can use the Markdown syntax, which, by the way, you can either Google it, or I'll send you guys this presentation where I just copied and pasted it. But you can use these types of characters to create a large heading, so large text, a little bit smaller text, next level smaller text, or to bold text, you sandwich it in double asterisk, or to italicize it in single asterisks. You do greater than block quote to do a block quote. So anyway, this is the formatting. We're going to use this single hash, and we're going to go ahead and do that over here in our display content block. We're going to say, pound, here's the poem, and then here we'll say pound, here's the poem, okay? And so by doing that, we have created now formatting. And so again, if we open it up in our draft agent mode and we say love and loss, we're going to get those formatting. So that's formatting by inside of a display block and also in calling a model and asking it to do it. Next, we're going to get more advanced, and this is where we start to get into the super fun stuff. And so here we go. This thing is still giving us this format. This is sort of the way GPT is returning it, where it gives you this thing in this control. Again, you can ask it not to do that. We're going to stop doing it. Again, mostly for writing. I recommend you use Claude anyway. And as you can see, here's that header that we put, and then here's the poem that we got here. Okay, let's go back here. And so now we know how to format and get things to come back in different ways. We can use this thing called Markdown, and with Markdown, we can choose our formatting. We will dive deeper into formatting later and get much more sophisticated. But first, I want to go back and talk more about variables, because this is really the most important thing for you guys to understand. Okay. So again, let's look at things now in this way. So this is our user input, okay? And let's say that instead of, even though this says poem, let's say we were writing something else, like some kind of a researcher, and we said, what should the research be about? And somebody wrote leopards are one of the most feared cats, is due to their, and then like 50 more words. And so they wrote this like big prompt here. And then we took that and we sent it to the generate text block. There it is. And we said to that generate text block, we gave it the prompt. The first thing we wanted to do maybe is correct the spelling and grammar in whatever it is these people typed in. So correct the spelling and grammar in this topic and clean up the formatting. So you guys know how to use these double curly braces. This makes sense, except for, again, once you think one layer deeper, you start to realize that what the model is going to see is correct the speller and grammar in, and then it's going to replace this, right? It's going to inject the topic here. So the model is going to see correct the spelling and grammar in leopards, who are one of the most feared cats and do. And this is weird. Now, these models are really good at like dealing with this kind of silliness, but we shouldn't force them to do that, right? And we should be smarter when we're writing these types of prompts where we're sandwiching things in like this, and keep that in mind that this is what's going to happen. And so in order to deal with this, there's a standard that kind of like all the model providers use, and that standard is called XML. Okay, XML is a very old standard. All that means is that you should delineate your, in this case, variables from the rest of the prompt. And in this case, what we could do is we could say this like less than, topic, greater than, and then the double curly braces topic, and then close this tag. Has everyone seen things like this before? This is also like a very basic HTML thing, right? Where you open the tag in these like less than, greater than signs, put something in the middle, and then you close that by saying end topic. And so when you do that, it's called wrapping variables in context. When you do that, what the model is going to see when it gets unpacked is correct the spelling and grammar in, and then the model is going to see these delimiters right here. And so the model is going to understand that between these two things, there's something that's getting injected here. And this is much more clear than this. Does anybody not understand this yet? Or does this seem clear? By the way, don't be afraid to say, listen, again, this is the For Dummies class. We celebrate the For Dummies. Dummies isn't bad. Dummies is good, right? Like a lot of people might be thinking, I still don't understand what this like spiky-haired guy is talking about. So don't be afraid to raise your hand. But we will keep using this XML as we go through. So you'll see more of it because this is good practice instead of just typing in your variable like this to wrap it in some context. By the way, you can call this anything you want as long as this, this is the same as this, and this has this little thing. You could have called this research or poem or whatever, it doesn't matter. Typically, it's good practice to call it whatever it is that this thing is between it. This gives model more context of what this thing is, okay? Okay, cool. So let's go on. Okay, another thing that people get really confused about are situations like this. And so again, I'm just going to keep you guys in here because it's faster than like building thing in this thing. Now you understand when I show you these things here, what I'm actually showing you is this like right-hand side of these blocks, right? I'm going to be showing you these right-hand sides. You don't need to see these very much, right? You just need to understand the order. And I'm going to be showing you these right-hand sides of this. Okay. And so let's say we've got a situation where we're calling two models, in this case, the same model, but it doesn't matter. But this is important in this case, the same model. And we're going to call it once, and we're going to say, write a poem about topic. And then we're going to call it again right afterwards. And we're going to say, take the poem you just wrote and write it in French. Have any of you tried doing something like this with like ChatGPT or Claude? Not in Mind Studio. Like when you're just chatting with Claude, you could say, write a poem. And then you could say, write it in French. And Claude's going to write it in French. Like, so that works when you're just chatting with a model directly. But when you're using Mind Studio or any of these other orchestration platforms, this is important to understand, is that each call to the model is isolated. And any future call knows nothing about prior calls. And so if you do this, it will say, what poem are you talking about? I don't know of any poem. And you'd be like, well, I just got this variable. You just sent it to me, but it doesn't know about that. So keep that in mind, really important. They're isolated. If you want to propagate context throughout, the thing to do is to get the poem written, again, save it here in a variable called poem Claude, and then for the next model call, simply say, here's the poem. Pass it into this next model call. And again, here I'm doing it between these XML tags to give it better context. Are you guys following me here? I get show of thumbs. Isolated calls. Yeah, okay, good. Isolated calls. If you want to pass variables through, you just pass them through. You just add them to the next call or future call. Okay. Okay, going on again. Mostly I'm going to stay in this way because I want to impart a lot of material on you, and you guys don't need to see me configuring blocks over and over again. You should know how to do this now. So one of the blocks we have in the system is a block which is to scrape URL. And it allows you, it allows you to, does everybody know what scrape a URL means? Load a website and get the content back? Yeah, okay. So it allows you to scrape a URL. And let's say we did that and configured it in this case. You need to give it a URL. We configured it to scrape finance.yahoo.com/quote Tesla, TSLA. And then we're going to take that and we're going to save it in a variable called page content. Okay? And so this is easy to do. You just say scrape URL, you put in this thing, you choose a variable, cool, you've just configured the scrape URL block. And let's say the next thing you want to do is to get a model to analyze this thing that you just loaded. And so you might say, analyze the stock. And again, we're using good formatting here, stock, end stock. And then we're putting in this page content. That's the variable we just created. And at this time, that variable stores all of the content that was on that page. And if you look at Yahoo Finance, you realize that there's actually a lot of content on this page. Kind of this main hero area is indeed about Tesla. But there's a bunch of other stocks here that are mentioned. And so if we ask the model to analyze the stock, now again, I say this may work. Like these models are extraordinarily good at figuring out that there's something dominant on this page versus not. But if you want it to be more precise, it's better to sort of get rid of this ambiguity. And so one thing you might want to do, this is a common pattern, is to add an additional generate text block before you analyze this. And specifically for this text block, give the model the instruction of, extract all of the info about the primary stock on this page. Or you might say all the primary info about Tesla. If the agent does nothing but track Tesla, you could say about Tesla. And then it will find all of the information about Tesla. We're going to store that in a new variable called stock data. And then in this next generate text, when we want to analyze it, instead of passing it the dirty page content, we're going to pass it the cleaner stock data. Does that make sense? Thumbs? Yeah? Okay. The other thing I'm showing you here that you should keep in mind is, again, depends on what agent you're building when you need to start thinking about this. If you're building a writer, a poet, again, highly recommend using Claude. I think it's like the best writing model that's out there, models. But for other things that you're doing here, for example, we're extracting data from a web page. These awesome little light models like Gemini 1.5 Pro, which is the one I find I use the most. It's kind of like the most, it's the fastest, cheapest, and really capable model of just like doing general things. So you might say, just to take the page info and extract all the information about the primary stock, we're going to use Gemini 1.5 Pro. Again, our agent's going to run faster, and it's going to be less expensive to run. And then once we've got the data, we might use like a reasoning model, for example, versus a regular language model to be able to do that. Okay, and so like keep these things in mind. You're architecting agents here. And again, as long as you know how to reference a variable, double curly braces, how to do it the right way, which is to put it between XML tags, then the rest of this becomes really, really straightforward. Okay, and now we're going to be talking a little bit about kind of like how to make better architectures of these things. Okay, have any of you heard of Retrieval Augmented Generation, RAG? Yes, show of hands, thumbs. Okay, so RAG, so look, the world of AI is full of acronyms and full of hype. And every day there's more and more hype. Has anyone heard of MCP? Show of hands. MCP? No? Get nodding. Okay, lots of people have heard of MCP. Somebody in a prior class asked me, what's the difference between MCP and an API? And my answer to them was, if you're asking, you actually don't need to know. But everyone is screaming at you, you need to know what MCP is and you have to use MCP and all that. We'll touch upon that maybe later. You can understand it, but the point was like just lots of acronyms being thrown. RAG was a super big one. I think it feels like it's less thrown around now, but irrelevant. The important part about RAG to understand is that it's a way to get the AI agent, instead of using its own knowledge, to use your data as a source of truth. Okay? And so like we could have an example. Let's say you work at a sort of a medium-sized company, and so therefore the models have all been trained on data about your company. And so you may have tried with ChatGPT or Claude before to say, what was last quarter's revenue for this company? And it says, here it is. That's where it was. Now, where did it get that data? Well, it got that data from the internet. It got that data because it was given like all of the internet, and somehow this was on the internet, and it got that. And so it's giving you a response from its own training, from its own knowledge. But what if you didn't want it to do that? What if you wanted it to use your data versus its own knowledge? That's what retrieval augmented generation is about. Now, most people, when you say retrieval augmented generation, the next sort of, and you do sort of like, what's that, word association game? The word association comes vector database. How many of you have heard this term vector database? Okay, I've got hands up. Okay. While indeed you can do retrieval augmented generation with vector databases, for the vast majority of things that you guys are going to want to do that are to create agents that use your data, you're not going to need to use vector databases. We make it super, super easy to use vector databases, but that confuses a bunch of people and they think they always need to use it. In fact, it's the opposite. You very rarely need to use it. I'm going to show you how to do retrieval augmented generation without using any vector databases. Okay, that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so let's say we're building this custom proposal generator with RAG. And what we want is for our salespeople to have a little user input, right, the form that they fill out when they speak with a prospect, and they collect some information from the prospect, and then they fill that out. And then that goes through, and the agent references our internal sales materials, right? And standard operating procedures of how we create proposals. And then the agent generates a custom proposal for our prospect. Now, the way that this would look on our canvas would be the user input. Then this is a display block. Let me show you. Let's see, I actually think I have this proposal generator. Here we go. We're going to go ahead, go here, proposal generator. There it is. By the way, you can collapse these things to get some more room here for yourself. So again, it's got a bunch of user inputs here that we will see. Actually, let's go ahead maybe and run this so we can see what that looks like. Open draft agent, and you will see a form with a bunch of user inputs: company name, contact name, company size, primary goals, the current tools the company is using, what their budget is, any constraints, etc. And so all of this is being generated by having a bunch of these user inputs here. You can just say plus, and you can add another user input to this. Like we could add another user input rating or something else, and then go back here and do it. And then, by the way, you can see user inputs here. You can also see user inputs right here. I'm going to take this one we just did, and I'm going to delete it because we don't need one called this. Okay, so we're going to show them a big form. This is for our internal salesperson to use. And then we're going to use this display content block. You remember that display content block from our poet? In display content block, we can display content to users. But the other thing you can do with display content block is to say save to variable. We were using it before to display something to a user, but we can actually use the same display content block. And instead of displaying something to a user, we can save it to a variable. And here, all I did for my demo is just I posted a bunch of our standard operating procedures and data. So you can post tens of thousands of, if you want, words in here in this thing. And that becomes a data source. And we're calling this data source our data. Okay? And then we have another display content block. And what we're doing with this display content block is we're creating a template of what our proposal looks like. Again, it's using Markdown here. So big heading, proposal for. Now here we're using the syntax where this isn't, you see, this isn't the curly braces which inject a variable. Here we're doing kind of this XML format, and it's called templating. And so you'll see what happens here when we do that. And so it says proposal for, and this means, hey, model, go ahead and put in the company name here that we're going to get from this user input here, right? And so this is going to put the company name in. And then it's going to say prepared for, and go ahead and put the contact name here. And then it's going to say, a little bit smaller font to the heading. This is heading 2. It's going to say project summary, and then it's going to do that. And so this is a template that we've created here for this thing to use. And then we go ahead and call our model here, and we say to the model, sort of act as a marketing proposal generating assistant, utilize the new prospects information, which is the thing that we've collected. Here's the prospects information that we're putting in down here. These are all of the variables that we created in this user input. See, there they are on the left-hand side. All of these things we collected here, those now live in these variables over here that you can see here. And here, again, we are putting them in the prompt. We're saying, here's the prospect's information, utilize it and create a proposal out of the template. Here, we're passing in the template that we just made in that last block, right? And we call that proposal template. Again, going back here, over here, we made a variable called proposal template. We created this template, and now we're saying, here's the template. Here's our data. Here's what we got from the prospect. Go ahead and generate a proposal. So we collected information from the prospect. Let me collapse this again. Collected information from the prospect. This, we just statically put it in there. This is like saying, here's a variable called our data. We can put a bunch of stuff about our data here, okay? again, display content saved to variable, proposal template. We can create a template for how we want the data to be displayed. And we'll talk more about templates in a moment. We'll get deeper into them. And then we called the model and we said, here is the tag. And you can click this little box right here to expand it and make it bigger. Here is our data. Here's the template. The other question that people often ask is like, well, what's the order of this? Does the order of this matter? And the answer is it doesn't, as long as you are being clear with using these XML tags. It doesn't. And so, for example, I could take this and I could put this like at the very top. And oftentimes this is a common pattern that, we and other people use, which is like you sort of put all of your variable things at the top, and then you say, here's the reference documents, here's the proposal template, and then go do this. Okay, can I see a show of hands of like, I know it's a little bit more complicated. It's like multiple steps, but feels generally accessible, yeah? Like you could play around with this stuff. We'll get more into the templating. Okay, cool. Again, this is where a lot of people in the past we've seen get confused on these types of things. Okay, let's keep going. Again, there's going to be some repetition here as we do more of this. Okay, the other thing, by the way, that I'm showing here is that this is called SOPs, product data, proposal template, and generate proposal. But our blocks over here, if we say new block, and we create a new generate text block, which is what this thing is. This is just a generate text block. By default, this says generate text. Well, what we can do is we can right click on the block and we can say rename, and then we could rename that block, something else. If we don't like this block, we can click here and we can delete that block. So again, just things to know. We tend to like to rename blocks. Another thing you could do, especially if you're going to be then later doing it for other people, is you can click on this little thing here, say new note, and you can create a note and you can explain what this thing is. These are the SOPs, and here we can say all of our data and SOPs. Okay, and this is just for you or anybody else that later then looks at your agent from this standpoint and sees this. This is a way of commenting on the screen. And again, you can click right here, say new note. Okay, cool. Let's continue. Okay, so now we're, again, I'm sort of rehashing this of what we see so we can see it all scrunched together. We got the form for our salesperson to fill out. We've stored all of our data here. We've created a template and we put it here. And then when we send all of that then to the model, we put it all together and we send it, and then we get a response back. And so we basically go from here to here's a proposal for Stark Industries, right? So bolded, prepared for Tony Stark, it injected all of that in there. Okay. Now, this storage of this data here can be done in multiple ways. One way to do it, which again is the general belief by people, is you just need to store it in a vector database. Again, we make that really easy to do. Let me show you how that's done if you ever want to do that. But we're not going to get deep into vector database stuff at this moment. Again, if we have time later, we'll do it. We've got a thing here called data sources. If you go here and you say plus, it allows you to upload files. You can upload up to 150 files simultaneously for each data source, up to 5 million words. You just say upload files. And so you can give it like all of your operating procedures or other data or whatever it is that you want it to be using. You can upload it, give it a data source name, and then later get that data into your flow by using this query data block. Again, for the vast majority of things you guys are going to be doing, we don't recommend it that you vectorize your data. You'll get confused and you're not going to get the best results. The vast majority of things we see people creating end up being done better by doing it this way. Or, as we keep going, there are other ways to do it. For example, this is our same workflow that we've been working with, the proposal generator. We've got the user inputs. what we've had before, which is the template and our data, and then the generate proposal. But we can replace that. For example, we could use the scrape URL block and have our data live somewhere on the web. And whenever this agent runs, instead of using static data that we put in during build time, we can get it to call a URL and bring that data back and now have fresh data. So again, depends on what you're building. Sometimes this is the right way to do it, to go check something, right? Like your source of truth might be what's in the news right now, or what's on the page on your product page or your sales page for this week. You guys are running a bunch of sales in your e-commerce company that you work for, and now you're building this agent that allows salespeople to make quotes. Well, this thing can check the page of like, here are all the sales, get that fresh context in, and then it can generate the proposal, taking into account those sales. And you don't have to constantly be opening up your editing your workflow. You can just put in scrape URL, which will do it at runtime. You guys following me here? Okay. You can also use a similar block we have called extract text from a file. Also, just like you point it via URL at a file and it does that. Some people like to use Google Docs. You might have your data already in Google Docs. And so you can just say, hey, fetch this Google Doc. And that gives you the data. That also becomes dynamic. And then you can just modify the Google Doc whenever you want, and that automatically updates your agent. So you don't have to go and use a display block saved to variable. Okay. And then again, finally, you could also use, again, these vectorized data sources that we're not going to cover here now. Okay. Should we take a quick break before we dive into it? I haven't been watching chat, but Luis, I'm sure, has. Are there questions, Luis, that I should go back to and before we move forward?
Folks in the chat have been following along with what you're doing, and so the chatter I'm seeing has to do with like very specific builds, not necessarily, what you were presenting on screen.
Okay.
That being said, like I think it's probably good to look at like just variables, just one. Maybe we could do like a quick recap going back to using variables in a
Yeah,
work.
we're going to have more variables.
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
not going to escape variables.
it
This
would
whole,
it,
the rest of it is about variables. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Great.
So, does anybody have a burning question right now that they'd like to, raise their hand and answer before we move on? People still okay? You guys don't need like a quick bio break? Are you guys good?
Hey,
Should I
Dimitri,
continue?
this is Sarah here. Hi, Dimitri.
Hello.
Hey, I have a question. You showed two blocks separately, like one for the Google Docs, another for uploading a PDF. Can we merge both of them into one and use it? Because so just in one interface, can we do both actions?
You would need to use two blocks, one to get the PDF and one to get the Google Doc. But then, yes, you could put them together and make the call to the model and send them together. You can have as many as you want like that.
So in the model diagram you showed, they'll be next to each other, so that
Yeah.
they into the
Right.
form.
Yeah, exactly. You can get the data and then say to the model when you're saying generate text, here is the PDF, here is the Google Doc, or like you'd give it more context. Here's our standard operating procedures that are in this PDF. Here's our configuration things for salespeople, best practices, and then put them together and then send it to the model. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I see more hands. Laura?
Hey, I'm kind of running ahead to like the final front end. It's like a front end question. If I were to implement one of these agents on my website, how would I go about changing the styling of the input forms? It's like a really maybe simple question, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, at this moment, you can't change the styling of our forms in our builder, although soon we will allow you to have like ultimate control of that, not directly in the thing, but using a different method for it. But today you just embed the form as is. By the way, again, here we're dealing with user input fields. Oftentimes, and again, hopefully we'll find some time during this call to show you that like people are creating AI agents that are triggered from a browser extension. So it's a button that just grabs the content on the page and does something. And so there are no user inputs, or it runs automatically on a schedule, or it gets called via API. For now, I'm intentionally using the forms to show you how to enter information, but there's many other ways to do it. Okay. Thank you, Laura. Norbert?
Thank you. It's a very interesting session or explanation you give. Can you, in the poem example, show how to interact? So you give the poem the order of make a poem about love and loss, and let's say then after the answer comes, the user wants to say, well, add winter to it. How to add this? How to continue the interaction?
Well, you would add an additional block, and depends on how you wanted to do it. You might add an additional block that gives people a menu of what else they could do, or you might add a block that allows people to write something. How do you want me to modify it? Or you might change, we call it the end block, to be chat, and that then it displays a chat window. So there's a number of ways to do that to continue the flow.
Is there a block called chat? Because that's then probably what I would want to use.
Block. Here, let me quickly show you. When we have an end block, let's not do it here. Let's go ahead, go to our Poet 2, and let's go back here. See, when you click on the end block, by default, the behavior is end session, but you can change this behavior to be chat. And if it's chat, when this thing ends, when it completes, you will get a chat window, and you'll be able to chat with it just like you can chat with a regular model.
And it goes on the answer given before.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Lewis.
Hey, great session, especially like this part about templating and stuff.
Yeah.
Question about using injecting a template. And I saw like in your example, you were injecting the company name and you had the caret braces.
Yeah.
Company _ name. The user input was called company camel case name with no underscore. How does it know that you're taking that user input of company camel case name and replacing it with company _ name?
Because it's intelligent. Well, this is actually what we're about to get into, is more of this templating. Again, Lewis is actually a super senior builder. So I knew that these were questions that lots of people would have. And so we're going to get into that templating. That's a lot of places that, again, even senior folks don't yet know about. And so that's the next section.
Very awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Andrew?
Hey, Dimitri.
Hey.
Thanks for taking my question. So I had a question about the web scraping. Let's say, for example, there was a website that had multiple pages, whether it's like a job board as an example. Would you be able to have the sort of process be scraping each page, or would you have to configure it very specifically to that? I just wonder if that's possible at all.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Let me show you about scraping. I think you guys are seeing the wrong screen. Sorry about that. Share. We're going to move you over here, and we're going to do desktop 2. Is this the right screen?
We see the Google.
Yeah, we see Google.
Okay, weird. Why is it not letting me share this? Sorry about that, guys. Give me a second. Zoom sometimes is finicky. How about that?
Yep, looks good. Thanks.
Cool. Okay, let's go ahead. And again, I'm going to sort of bastardize the poet here, and I'm going to add say plus, and I'm going to say scrape URL. By the way, for those of you that haven't seen it, you can go to view all blocks, and this is where you get like all of those blocks that I was showing you. Here's the scrape URL block. The scrape URL block so there's two providers, as we call them. One is the default provider, and one is this firewall provider. The default provider is super simple. You give it a URL, you give it the output variable. This is what it's going to store the data in that it comes back with. And then you specify whether you want, we'll talk about JSON objects in like half an hour. We'll get into JSON. So you could say either bring back just regular text or bring back this JSON object, which is more structured. And then there's like some other sort of parameters like this, automatically adjust settings for certain URLs, prevent scraping errors, etc. If you change this to Firecrawl, you get a bunch of additional options that are here, okay? And so like you can manipulate headers, you can get this thing to take screenshots, you can deal with rate limiting and things like that, right? And whatever, it's like cleanliness here. What you don't see here, though, is multi-page scraping. To implement multi-page scraping, the typical pattern here is to use a JavaScript function and to say plus. Again, we're not going to get into it probably in this class, but certainly I'll do another one that's a bit more advanced on functions. It's really straightforward to implement a JavaScript function that iterates through an array of URLs and keeps scraping. So there's a number of patterns to do it, but that's how you would do it. But I just wanted to show you on the scrape URL block that there are sort of a bunch of other parameters you can configure, although multi-page scraping by default is not one of them that's here now.
Okay,
But
nice to meet
straightforward
you.
to do. In fact, that's how I suspect a bunch of you have seen. If not, let me quickly show you our researcher. And so if you go here to AI agents, these are AI agents that we allow you to just run. These are ones we created. You can run them either through here, or you can run them in our Chrome extension, right? And so, for example, you could be on whatever, CNN, always scary to load URLs now for the news. But here's the Chrome extension. You could click on this, and let's say I wanted to run the TLDR agent here. I can just say run. See, it grabs all of the content on this page and comes back to me with here's a summary, here's people that are mentioned, etc. Okay, so this is this TLDR agent that's in our store right here. And so another one's called Deep Researcher. And so let me click on that. So you can either run it here, or if you click on these three dots, you can say make a copy. So any of the agents in our store are copyable. And that's a great way for you guys to learn like what's possible, how to build things, is by looking at the things we've built and we made available here. And so far we've been working with just one workflow, right? In our Poet and other things, we've had one workflow, the main flow. But you can have many workflows, and this one has, as you can see, multiple. Here's the main flow in this one, which is, whoa, that's a lot. And so it is a lot, but this thing is really, really powerful. What this thing is it's a master Google searcher. It could search hundreds of URLs simultaneously and do it. And here, to do that, it uses these JavaScript functions. Hold on, let me find this. There you go. This one calls this another block called run workflow. And so from this workflow, we call another workflow. This one is the run query flow. And here in this run query flow, this JavaScript function here searches through an array of URLs and do it. By the way, you can take this function and make a copy of it and simply then import it into your flow and do it. So we see a lot of people doing that with our agents, which is, again, taking all the work we've done to create these things. Once you feel comfortable in the editor here, of like, you click on things and then you can grab them here. You can make a copy of any of these agents, or you can select a whole bunch of these together and make a copy and then paste it into your own workflow. Or you can make a copy of this entire workflow and then put it into your own workflow. And so you can cobble these things together to do things. But that's how you would do multi-page scraping. So it's really straightforward to do, but you just need to do it that way. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Okay, should we get into templating? Okay, cool. Let's do that. Let me close some tabs here and then share my screen again. So let's say we're making a blog post generator. Here's our friendly user input, text area. What should the blog post be about? And then we have a really simple thing that says write a blog post. We're calling Claude 3.5 Haiku. We're just displaying it to the user. Okay. And then again, we're doing good practices of using XML to delineate the prompt from the payload, from the data that we're sending, the blog topic. Blog topic, here's the blog topic. It says, I got you. Here's a blog. Like many of you probably tried to do this with Claude or ChatGPT. You could say, write a poem, write a blog, and it says, here's a blog. Now, is this the blog you wanted? Well, it made a lot of decisions here on writing your blog post, right? You can say, write a blog, and it does it. But is this the blog you want? Not necessarily. It's because we gave it no guidance of sort of like the type of info we want in the blog or the formatting of how we want it formatted. And so it just like did this. But we can control all of that. And this is generally known as templating. And so let's imagine that what we've done is we've taken that generate text block that before this was just this, write a blog post, here's the topic. And then we modified it where it said, write a blog post, use Markdown. So that's for formatting, bold, and things like that. And then here's the topic, the blog topic that we collected. And what is all of this other stuff here? So all of this other stuff here is the template as it's known. Now, here I'm using these square brackets, but earlier, just like Lewis was asking, I was using the less than greater than brackets. It actually doesn't matter. You could use either of them. Now, so I'm mixing it up here. I'm using this. Okay, so you choose. It's a matter of style. And so what is this doing? So here I said blog title, hook and context, then main point, and then sort of a couple of bullets, supporting detail, example, main point 2, supporting detail, example, summary, and call to action. Do I have any variables that are this? No, I don't. The only variable I have is blog topic, right? The only thing we collected here was the blog topic. That's the only variable we have. And now I'm saying these kinds of things. So these are not variables. These are, again, things that will get sent to the model, generate text that just sends this to the model. And what the model will see is it'll see write a blog post, use Markdown. It's going to see topic, and inside of it, it's going to be the blog topic. In this case, how venture capital is dealing with high interest rates. And then it's going to see this template. It understands this as a template. And when you do things like this, it says, I see what you're trying to do. You want me to make a blog post that has an area where I'm going to put the blog title. Whatever blog title I model come up with, I'm going to separate that, and I'm going to put it in this thing right here called blog title. It looks like you're looking for another thing for this blog post to have right below the blog title, which is something you're saying hook in context. Now you could use any other words. You don't have to say blog title. You could say, the title, right? Blog, the blog title is the right thing to say. But I'm saying is like these aren't variables. So you could say anything you want as long as the model understands what you want here. Is this hook in context, or is this like subtitle, or is this like a summary, a TLDR? It doesn't matter. When you say it, it knows that I need to put something here. I need to fill this area in. I model need to create a blog title. I need to create some other thing below it, which seems like it's just some kind, in this case, it's interpreted that as being like a couple of sentences. And then what I need to create is 2 points, 2 points, main point 1 and main point 2. And for each of those 2 points, I need to provide the main point, the supporting detail of the point, and then an example of that. And that's indeed what it does. When you use templates like this, you get, in this case, the blog title, the hook in context, the main point. The cost of capital becomes more expensive, true. The supporting detail, in this case, it interpreted that to be 3 bullet points. Again, we could have specified it even more specifically by just putting some of these words like this in a template. We could have said 3 bullet points, or we could have said, additional paragraph, right? Could have said paragraph. So it's up to us. This can be very fuzzy. This is just natural language. But by putting it in this kind of a format, makes it clear that this is a template, and therefore gets the model to just fill these things in. Think of it like it's just filling these things in. And so you see it's filled in the supporting detail. It's created an example, and it's labeled it example. See, and then it did the main point 2, and then it created the supporting detail and example, and then it wrote a summary and a call to action. And we did all of that simply by giving it one variable, the blog topic, and by providing it with a template. Following me so far? This gives you an insane flexibility to now, again, to explain to the model specifically what you want it to return. You can make it fuzzy like this, like just some bullet points of like what you want the output to feel like and be like. And these things will create that for you. Really, really powerful. Okay. Okay. Let's move on a bit. So, and we're going to come back to more templating and more formatting later as well. One of the types of user inputs you can create is this upload file control. Let's quickly take a look at it. We're going to say plus user input. We're going to add a new user input. Again, since you can have many user inputs, you get this sort of container. You can say create new. And here we're going to go down. We're going to say upload file. And here we're going to say, what is the result going to be called when the file gets uploaded? What is that going to be called? And whatever, I'll call this my files, or like users files. Okay, you can call it files. You can call it anything you want. By the way, some of you may say, like, why isn't this capitalized and this capitalized? This is a type of format that you don't have to use it. You could say, user underscore files. You could say files. You can call it anything you want. But it's common practice in programming to use this camel case. And so I can say user files. Okay. And here is the label. What does it say? And I could say upload your file or your files. It's up to us. And then, by the way, you can create a featured image as well here. And then here you can say, do you allow all types of files or only certain types of files? For example, this one only takes PDFs or HTML or text or whatever. I'm just going to say all. And then it says, do you want to allow multiple files or restrict it to a single file? So again, just depends on what you're doing. You might want to just get one file and validate that it's just one file, or you might want it to be multiple files. And then here, do you want to extract it or not? By default, it's extracted, which is kind of what you want. And so this variable, users files, really should be called user data, because it's going to be extracted. You won't get the files, you'll get the data out of the files. You could also call it data. Okay, and so now we've got this variable user data, and so we can grab it, and again, then we can use it. And we could say, send that to the model, for example. Here's the user data that was uploaded, analyze this. This is a good way to create, various types of analyzers. Let the user or yourself upload a file or files, and then send that data to the models and get it to do something with it. Really simple way to do that. But the point of this that I wanted to show is not the fact that you can upload, but something else. So let's say we've allowed people to, it's an analyzer, content analyzer. We allow them to upload files, and maybe we upload a lot of files, a lot of data. And then we say, look, here's the content, uploaded content, right? And so this is the result of what gets uploaded. And then we say, analyze content for, and look, we're once again using our templating. Because what does analyze mean? Well, here you can say analyze the clarity and readability, analyze structure and flow, tone and voice, blah, blah. And so we're saying analyze that. Again, so there's just more templating. But again, that's not the thing I'm trying to show you here. Right here is a thing that's sort of saying what I'm pointing at, which is depending on how big this file is, how much data is in it, or these files, you need to think about what model you're going to send that to. Each model has something called a context window. It's context window size is another way of referring to it. And what that means is how much data can you send to it before you overload it and it breaks and it errors out. And so, and by the way, if you send it too much data, then it will fail and you'll get an error. And so you should be conscious about this because models have quite a range of context windows. We display them for you here when you choose the model. You remember in our generate text block, we can click here and we can choose what models we're using. We show how much it costs for million tokens in, million tokens out. And then this little icon here is the context window. And here, by the way, by default, you're searching by provider, but you can also change this to be by context window. And then, we can change the sort order. So this has 2 million context window. But if we scroll down, this thing has only 4K context window, 4,000. It's a huge difference between 2 million and 4,000. Now, what does that mean, context window? Well, generally, by the way, you can Google this and Google will calculate it for you. So 2 million tokens is about 1.4 million words. It's a lot of words. 200,000 tokens, 165K words, 4K tokens, like 3,000 words. It's like 75% typically of this, and that's what it is. So be conscious when you expect to be sending large amounts of data to a model. Watch out for what model you're picking. Yeah, does that make sense? Cool. Okay, another thing that people get a bit confused by is how many of you have heard of a system prompt versus just a regular prompt? Show of hands, anybody? A couple of people? Yeah. By the way, folks that are still here, that have your cameras on, I appreciate it. Again, those of you that don't, that's fine. But if you want to turn them on, it's a good way for me to gauge whether you guys are grokking it or not. Okay, so if we go back to here, and then you remember I was showing you that mostly we've been in this automations tab, but there was another tab here, for example, called Profiler that I showed. There's another tab over here called System Prompt. And so what is this? So the way models work is you can send sort of two different types of prompts to them. One is called a system prompt, and the other one is a user prompt. And this is where you configure the system prompt if you want to use it. You don't have to use it. So far, we haven't used it at all. But you can use it. And the way that you would use it when you wanted to do it is in this way. So let's say that, again, you're creating something like a simplifier that simplifies topics. The role that you want it to play of what the agent does goes into system prompt. If you're separating them. We've been taking this type of stuff and just injecting it into the user prompt, or also known as the block prompt. And that's fine also. But again, if you ever see people separating them, that's also good practice to separate here's the stuff generally of what this AI agent is meant to do. And here is for each call that we make to a model, specifically what we want you to do. So you're not constantly with every call to the model having to write this. And when you do this, when you put a system prompt and a block prompt together, whatever's in the system prompt and whatever's in the block prompt together gets sent to the model. And so the model gets the system prompt saying, you're this, in this case, proposal generator. And then it also gets here, generate this proposal. You guys following me? So this is for the role, and this is for what do you want the thing to do right now for this step. Okay. By the way, let's stick with this, and let's go back to here. And again, let's say here we're creating a financial analyst. Okay, this can be a financial analyst agent, and we're going to let people upload, PDFs or anything else, and then this thing is going to go and it's going to, analyze this, and then we're going to pass to it what's this thing we called it, user data, and then we can say, again, let's be good. We can say data, And although in something simple like that, it's not going to get confused because it knows like what the data is, but let's get in the good practice of doing that. And here we're going to say user data, close double curly braces. Okay, so everybody still with me on this, right? Here it is. Okay, now at this moment, if this is all I send to this thing, first of all, it doesn't know its name. That doesn't get sent with the model, what this thing is called. All it will see is analyze this, and whatever gets expanded out, right, injected into here of user data. And if we uploaded something which is like a financial report, like it will understand. You want me to analyze this financial report. But there are times where you might have ambiguity. And so better practice would be, again, two ways to do it. One would be is to give the role right here. And so some people like to say like act as a financial analyst. Some people like to say you are a financial analyst or do financial analysis. Like doesn't matter. You can do that here. Or you could go to system prompt, because let's say we're going to be doing a larger implementation here. It's going to have a bunch of these generate text blocks and other blocks that we're going to send to models. Instead of writing each time this thing, we can go to system prompt and simply write here what we want it to do. That's one way. Or if you look down here, there are two things. One's called generate prompt. Whatever you do, don't click this one, generate workflow. We will teach you how to use that later, not in this session. This one confuses everyone. It's extraordinarily powerful, but it's for advanced users. You are not yet advanced users. Please don't click that. Because if you do, chances are you're going to message support and you're going to say, this stuff is so close, it's almost working. And we're going to say, did you use this generate workflow? And you're going to say, yes. Don't do it. We're going to use this generate prompt. In here, we can actually say it. I like to say assistant is, again, doesn't matter what you call it. Agent is, financial analyst, helping user, analyze financial documents. Okay, you can be more specific, less specific. Here I can say generate. And actually what this thing is, this is just another agent that we built ourselves and is now integrated back into Mind Studio. So this prompt generator was actually built with Mind Studio and then integrated into the core of Mind Studio. And what it does is it asks the user, what do you want the system prompt to be about generally? And then it writes a nice comprehensive system prompt for you. And so you didn't have to write a bunch of this stuff. It like really thinks through and writes a good system prompt and puts it in here, okay? And there you go. And so it wrote the system prompt. Assistant serves as financial analyst. Here it's tasks, review, analyze financial documents, supported analysis, response format. So it does like a really good job of writing this thing that you could have written yourself, but you didn't have to. And now when we say analyze this, what the model is going to get is it's going to get this, analyze this plus the user data. And behind the scenes, it's also going to get the system prompt. And so it will know this is what we want it to do. And this is what we wanted to do now with that information. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so let's get into this. Now, I've seen countless people really struggle with this JSON thing. One, I'm gonna warn you, first time you see it, it looks scary. It looks like a bunch of code, and you're like, hey, I thought you guys told me this was like a no-code platform, okay? But it's once you understand it, and once you understand how to use it, you get it insane superpowers to be able to do it. So it's valuable to be able to like dive into it a little bit and learn to understand it. Not to understand it, not learn to understand it, to understand it. And I'm going to try to do the impossible here, which is to get you guys to understand in this For Dummies class, to understand JSON. I'm going to attempt a magic trick here. Let's see how successful I am. I'm going to rely on all of you after I'm done with this to either give me like, man, that was a total failure. I'm so confused. Or like, I'm sort of getting it. Or some of you might say, I finally get it. And my goal is to see if I could convert some of you into like, I finally understand JSON. That's what I'm going to attempt here. Okay. So JSON is a way of storing data. It's a variable. It's a type of a variable. And it's actually a type of a structure of a variable. And so let's take a look at this example. Let's create a motivational poster, like a poster you can hang on a wall, a motivational poster generator. And we're going to use our friendly user input block. We already know what this is. This is the long text block. We're going to say, what should the poster be about? And we're going to call the output of that, we're going to call that poster topic. And here we're going to use our friendly generate text block that you guys have seen. And we're going to use good formatting here, topic, poster topic, and topic. And we're going to say generate content for a promotional poster about the topic. Okay, so we collected what the topic is about for the poster. We're saying, here's that topic. Now, generate content for the promotional poster about this topic. And then here we're going to say return JSON. That's just good practice. But here in this output schema, if we go back to our prior generate text blocks, over here, you see output schema, we've been dealing with text. But there are other output schemas, for example, like CSV. Does everybody know what CSV is? It means comma delimited. And so it's structure where you get a bunch of output and each item is comma delimited. You can then take that, for example, and import it into Excel or Google Sheets or things like that. Or we can say JSON, okay? And if we say JSON, it gives us this additional field over here that allows us to create these key value pairs. That's what JSON is. It's these key value pairs. Okay, but let's look at it over here. And so I put some stuff in here in these key value pairs, and then we're using our friendly display content block. And here you get this like weird thing. It looks like, what is this? Like it's double curly braces, but like it doesn't seem to have a variable. It's got like this get poster content title. Let's look at what's happening here. Again, we're asking the user, what should the poster be about? That's called poster topic. And we're saying that we're going to send this poster topic, and we're asking the model to come back with a variable called poster content. And that variable should have this format. Now, reading it here is kind of hard, but I sort of broke it out for you guys and colored it a little bit so you can better understand what's written in here. And let's take a look at it. So all JSON objects have these single curly braces around them. That's how it knows that it's an object, is it's got a curly brace around it. Later, we'll look at other types of data structures, like arrays, for example, or other things that have different delimiters than this. So when you see these curly braces and you see this is called a key, and then colon, and some other value, and then a comma, and then a key, colon, and some value, and then a comma. Each one of these things together, the key, colon, plus the value, these are known as key value pairs. Key value pairs, that's the technical term for it. So this is a JSON object, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, has 5 key value pairs. The first key is the key title, and we're assigning a value to it of strong, comma, provocative. And then, by the way, key value pairs are separated by commas, okay? And then we have a next key value pair, and the second key is called subtitle and a colon. And then this one doesn't have anything in it. It's just blank. I'll explain to you why these things have things in them or blank, but that's not the relevant part right now. What's relevant is to start to see when you see this like blob of words, especially here where they're not color-coded, to realize, oh, I see, here's the key title, because you want to look for the colon. So this is the key, and then the colon, and then the value, and then there's the comma, okay? And then there is the key, the colon, and the value, and there's the comma. So each key value, comma, is a pair, okay? And then we have a key called body, and a value of up to 50 words. We have a key called call to action, and we have a value of blank. And then we have a key called image prompt, and we have a value of prompt to have AI model generate background image. Wow, what is all this junk over here? I thought this stuff was going to be simple. We're just asking people to create a motivational, what do they want their motivational poster about? All they're telling us is the poster topic. And we're sending that poster topic and this prompt generate content for a promotional poster. And then we're sending the sample output. Now, some of you might look at this and say, oh, this feels kind of like that template thing we were doing earlier. You remember back half an hour ago, we were doing templating for that blog post generator? And we said we want the title and the subtitle and the bullet points and all that. This is another version of that. This is a template using JSON. Okay. And so, okay, so that's that. And then and so that calls the model. And so the model gets these things and it gets called. And then remember, here the next thing we're saying is display content. And then we are saying get poster content title, get poster content subtitle. Okay, what is this? Again, let's look at this. This variable over here that comes back is called poster content. And when it comes back in JSON format, the value of poster content is this object. And that object gets filled in by the model. And so it's going to come back with title, and it's going to fill in a strong and provocative title. Just like in the blog post generator earlier, you remember it filled in with the title and the subtitle. It's going to do that. For the subtitle, we didn't say anything. We left it blank. So it's got no guidance. So it's going to fill in the subtitle. But it knows we need a field called subtitle, and it's going to come up with something. For the body, the only guidance we gave it is up to 50 words. And so it's going to come back with content that's going to be up to 50 words. And then for call to action, we didn't give it any. So it's going to come back with something. And for the image prompt, we said prompt to have AI model generate background image. What do you think is going to come back in this prompt here? Well, it's going to be the prompt that the model wrote about the topic that we could then take and send to an image model in order to have an image model generate the image for us, because we need a nice background image, right, for the poster. And that's what we're getting it to do now. So with this one little call right now, we're getting back not one variable, in a sense, but 5 variables. Poster content title, poster content subtitle, poster content body, poster content call to action, and post content image prompt. And then we access, when we deal with JSON objects, we use this notation. It's still in curly braces because it needs to be expanded. And we say the word get, lowercase get, then the variable name, poster content, and then the key. And so poster content title is going to print this out. In poster content, image prompt that I don't have here, but like call to action is going to print that out. And that's indeed what's happening here. Get poster content title. Don't give up. I said, when I ran this, I asked it to give me a motivational poster about successes around the corner. And so it came back with a title, Don't Give Up. Subtitle, Success is Just Beyond the Horizon. The body, this is what it did, less than 50 words, indeed. The call to action, keep believing and striving. And then the image prompt that I asked it for, and here it said, a sunrise breaking through dark clouds, symbolizing hope, emerging challenges. So when we have a JSON object we're dealing with, we use this notation get, the variable name, that's the name of the object, and then in quotes, the name of the key, not the key, but the name of the key, the title, the body, etc. Okay, more JSON. We're going to stick with JSON. Okay, so far, is this some of you have probably seen, how many of you have seen JSON before? And like potentially have been scared of JSON. Okay, is this at all helping you in understanding JSON, or is it confusing you? By the way, you can give me thumbs up. I like negative feedback too. Yeah, okay, cool, awesome. Well, making progress. Otherwise, you guys are wasting your time, and I don't want to waste your time. Okay, so again, let's look at this thing just in bigger. So poster content is equal to this object, and this is the template, And when it gets rendered, the poster content actually says title, and it puts in the title, subtitle, and so we get that. And so this is the format. Whenever you see that, that's a JSON object. I already explained this to you, that by putting in these values into the sample output, by saying strong and provocative, it gave me a strong and provocative title when it generated that. If I would have put funny, it would have worked the same way, except it would have given me a funny title. So this is just a template. That's what you put in here. If you don't put anything in, it makes its own decision of what to put there. Okay? By the way, same thing. If you didn't put anything in the sample output, but you just did choose JSON, it would have made its own decisions on what kind of a JSON structure might be valuable to create, content for a poster, to generate a poster. And it would have come up with a bunch of its own ideas, and you can do that too. Okay, now let's get even more sophisticated with JSON. Let's take a look at this JSON object. This JSON object we're calling user. This one looks more complex than the other one, right? Why does it look more complex? Well, let's take a look at it a little bit more in depth. First of all, it has these things that look like they're indented. And then it's got these square brackets over here and these like things with commas in square brackets. And then it's got these curly braces over here. So it's like all kinds of weirdness here. But I'm going to, again, attempt the impossible to get you guys to understand this. And I believe it's possible. Let's just go through it from the top down. And so again, this is modeling a user. And the user's name is just a regular, this is called a string. A string just means characters and signified by quotes. You could write anything. So the type of name is its type of string, and its value is Alice. So the name of the user is Alice. The age of the user, notice that the number 30 does not have quotes around it. And because it doesn't have quotes around it, we know that this is actually of type number. Now, if we would have put quotes around it, that would have worked too, but it would have been of the type string. By the way, models are able to deal with that, but if you don't see quotes around numbers, it's because of something called typing. Okay. Now, here's another thing that says is member, and then :true, not in quotes. What does this mean? What do you think this means in an object called user, and it has this? Well, it's probably like it's a data structure that is modeling whether this user is a member of some service, whatever this object belongs to, or not. And it says it's true, so that this Alice is a member. If this would have said false, then the object would have implied that Alice is not a member. And so this type of value, type, is called a Boolean, typically represented by BOL. It means true or false. It's a common way in computer programming of modeling data. It's a type of data structure, it's called. This is a Boolean. This is a string, just a bunch of characters. This is a number, so you can add numbers together. This is a Boolean, true or false. This thing, hobbies, is a whole other type of animal. And we know that because it has these square brackets. And when you see square brackets in a JSON object, what they mean is that this type of value is called an array. An array is just a collection of values in an order, ascending order, starting at 0, 0, 1, 2. If we add another comma and something else, that would then be 3, 4, 5. You can have as many as you want in an array. An array is just a way of grouping things together. And this one is grouping her hobbies together. And so we know that by this thing. It's an array. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is depending on what type of a thing this is, we get to it in a different way to be able to get its value. And that's where we're getting to, is this thing right here. Don't skip forward yet than this. Okay. So we've seen a string. We've seen a number. We've seen a Boolean value, true or false. We've now seen an array, a collection of things, sometimes referred to as a list, depending on what programming language you're using, array, list. And then we have contact. And contact looks super weird. Does anybody want to guess what contact is? Maybe in chat? Anybody want to type in chat? If you already knew it, don't do it. For new people who this is the first time they're figuring out what is contact. What kind of a type is contact? Anybody? Bueller? I've got array. Okay, thank you, Laura. That's incorrect. Okay, Demetrius, we've got JSON. Yeah, so object, there you go. I was looking for the word object, thank you. JSON is an object type too. This is an object, and so this is a JSON object, and inside of it, it has a string, a number, a Boolean, an array. Array is with square brackets. And then this thing called contact, and contact is another object. And this is the beginning of that object. And this is actually the end of the object. And this is the end of this object here, because phone is also an object. And phone is an object nested inside of the contact object. So you can think of these things as being like folders, like in a computer, right? Where you've got folders. And inside the folder, you might have a file. That's a file. It's directly inside the folder. And it's a file called name. And in that file is Alice. And there's another file called age. And in that file is 30. There's another file called isMember. And in it is true. And there's another file called hobbies. In it are three things, because it's an array. It's an array of three things. But then it has a folder, in a sense, called contact. And in that folder are also files. In this case, a file called email that has Alice. So this is just a string inside of the object contact, which is inside of the object user. And then also in this contact object, as we keep going, you see it doesn't get closed. We have a comma, and we have another key called phone. And that itself is an object. And that has two values, home, this is for phone, home phone, comma, mobile phone. And then we close the bracket to close this object right here. And then we close the bracket to close this object, right here. And then we close the bracket to close the entire object here. Okay, so this is what JSON is all about. You will see this is very flexible. So you can model countless things. That's why it's so popular. You can model countless things using JSON. But again, once you understand it, you just need to look for these like key value pairs separated by commas and the key and the value separated by colon. And then look for signs of, does the value have quotes around it? If it does, then the value is a string. The value is a number, easy to see. If the value is true or false, that's a Boolean. If the value has these square brackets surrounding something. Now, by the way, these square brackets could be surrounding things that don't have, that aren't strings. This could be square brackets, and this could be called, ages of her friends. And so these might be numbers that are in here. Or there might be additional objects, because again, you can nest anything in anything here. So array can have nested arrays. Array can have nested objects. You can get into all kinds of craziness. That's why it's so flexible. But again, don't be afraid of it. Just understand these things. Here's your little cheat sheet. Square brackets is an array. Curly braces is an object. Okay. And things that are in quotes are a string. Okay. Things that are not in quotes, that's a number, and true, false is Boolean. Okay, cool. And so now let's see if we wanted to reference, it's called, if we wanted to find the mobile phone number of Alice's mobile phone number, how would we do that? We'll come back to that. That's the hardest. If we wanted to find Alice's name, we would say get the variable name is called user, and then the key name. Alice, because this name is directly in the root of user. And so user name. Same with age, right? It's in the root. It's right below user here. It's in the same file. Again, back to the file folders analogy. It's in the same file. It's in the big user file. And so we get name and we get age. Now, same thing with is member, right? If we wanted to see, is she a member or not, we would say get user, and in quotes, we would say is member, and the value of that would be analysis case true. But then if we look at hobbies, we wouldn't say user hobbies. Well, actually, that's not true. We could say user hobbies, but the value of user hobbies would be this entire array of hobbies. And maybe that's what you want. But if you wanted elements in this array, items in this array, the way arrays work is arrays are numbered. They're ordered via numbers. And so we access them by what's known as their index. And it starts with 0. So if we wanted to get this thing over here, we would say user, hobbies, and then we use this square notation to get at arrays. And then in this case, this would be 2 because they start with 0. So this is 0, 1, 2. Okay, if we wanted to get this would say user, hobbies, and in square brackets, we would put 1. And so that gives us cycling. Okay, that's how you deal with arrays. When we now deal with objects within objects, we use what's known as the dot notation. Why? Because it has a dot. And so let's take a look at this. Again, it's actually not that hard. Once you grok it, you can master this. If you can master this, you got no problems after this. Like everything else becomes easy. This arguably is the most important thing that I'm showing you. It seems like the hardest, but you can master it. Even if you don't master it like here right now, go back later, watch this again, go play with it on your own, make mistakes. But once you feel comfortable with JSON, wow, you can do crazy, crazy things with AI agents. JSON unlocks all of the advanced capabilities. Simple prompting, JSON object storage, data structure, and JSON for templating, as I've been showing you. Those 3 things, nobody can beat you. That's awesome. Okay, so let's take a look again at these next things. Let's say we wanted to get this email. Now, again, here's your cheat sheet, how you'd get the email. Well, first you would say get. We always say get. That's the command, get. Oh, and then the variable name. So that all of these things live inside the variable user. So get user. In quotes, we then put the path to the thing that we want. The path here was like, there is no path. It's just a name. It's in the root. It's just a name. But here there is a path because it's not in the root. It's nested, it's called, deeper. And so we put the path. And in this path, we say user, and then we go down the thing at the root, and then we hit contact, and then we move over 1, and then we go down this. So we say contact, and then within that contact folder, in the root of the contact folder, we get email. And so get user contact email gives us Alice. If we want this mobile phone number, you see we had to go down 1 more. See, so we started at user, and then we went to contact, and then there was in the phone key here within contact. So contact has 2 items in it. It has email, which is a string, and it has this phone thing, which is an object of 2 other elements in contact. So our contact has 2. And so we said contact. Then we said we want the phone item in contact, but that itself is an object. And so we have to go down 1 more step, and that's how we get mobile. How would we get home? Well, user, contact, phone, home. How's that feeling? Does it make anybody's head hurt? Okay. Okay. So one last thing I'm going to teach you here, just to make your head blow up. But I want to point you to like where you can get to really, really quickly once you go down this path. And again, I'm going to do another one of these classes where hopefully, if you guys are interested in it, you can come a second time and we'll make it even sort of more advanced and better. And then we'll talk more about this formatting as HTML. So we talked about formatting with Markdown. And Markdown is awesome because, again, it's a standard and it allows you to make headers and to make paragraph breaks and do some good formatting. But it has a bunch of limitations. On the other hand, by the way, and so with that, we were able to do this. And we say, hey, what should the poster be about? We said to a model, go ahead and generate the content for the poster. The kind of content we want is the title, should be strong and provocative, subtitle, body, call to action, and an image prompt. And then we use the display content block, and that's what you see these, again, hash here, that you see these hashtags and the pound signs. These are Markdown. This is the most bold. This is less bold, but still super bold. This is a bit less bold than that. This is, again, goes up and is bolder than this, less bold than this. And here we just had display to user. And then we got this. We got something really bold, single hash. This is Markdown again. The double gets us less bold. The triple gets us even less bold. Here's a double again, so this is the same size as this. And then here's a double again. These are the same sizes. That's some formatting. It's better than no formatting, but this is kind of limiting. But if we took that same workflow and instead of using the display content block and using Markdown, and we replaced it with another block that we have in Mind Studio, and that's called the generate asset block, that unlocks a lot more capabilities of what we can do. Nothing else changed. Everything is the same. What should the poster be about? The prompt is the same. The JSON with the sample output is the same. But now we have this other block, the generate asset block. And again, here, what this thing asks for is what is the source document? In this case, we're going to say the source document, meaning what is the template? This is a template that we're using. It's HTML. What do you want me to call the output of this block? We're going to call that the poster. It's going to generate the poster for us using HTML, not using Markdown. HTML is dramatically more flexible than Markdown. You can arrange things, you can layer things, composite them, you can have incredible color control, you can have multimedia built in, right? You've seen HTML, like everything you've ever seen on the web is rendered with HTML. So like anything you've ever seen rendered on the web, you can now render inside of your agent, or your agent can create it and then you can export it and send it somewhere else or do something. So this block is incredibly powerful, but it scares people because they've never sort of taken this class. I'm hoping to like ease you into it. And I'll have a whole class on this coming up soon because this is the real unlock, because then you can get everything. Okay. Now, if you've never written HTML, you'll be like, whoa, look at all these colors and a bunch of weird looking things. Don't worry about it. How many of you have played with HTML before? Show of hands. You don't have to be an expert. Like, you tried it? Yeah? Okay, so most people are still off thing. Cool. Okay, if you haven't, don't worry about it. I didn't write this. We now have AI models. You can ask it to write it. I'll show you in a second how to do that. But this is HTML and it's easy. Okay, and so we can use this block. And look what happens when we use that block. Now, by the way, I've expanded what is in here. I click this little button here just to show you the whole file. And this is what it is. It's a bunch of these, these are called HTML tags. And in it are, similar things to what we've seen in other things before, key value pairs of various types, sorts, and commands, okay? That doesn't matter right now, but look what it was able to do. The output of that wasn't just some bolding. It was an image in the background. Here's our title. Here's our subtitle. Here's our call to action. and that got rendered in here. So this is much better, obviously, than this. And we were able to do that with the exact same call to the model, but then formatting it, templating it, using HTML versus using Markdown. How's that done? Again, so there's the HTML document itself, and that has nothing to do with Mind Studio. That's just HTML. Okay, you could take that HTML from any other web page and then paste it in here. What you can see here, though, is between these HTML tags, you see title, this is the title of the page. The way HTML works is there's something called head and something called body. Head is where you get what's called the metadata of the page. And each page, like in your browser, when you load a page, if you look at the top of the browser, each page has this thing called title. And here into the title, we're injecting, see, this is the old way we already learned, get poster content, which is that variable we have that's the JavaScript object. And you remember it had a title. And we're just going to put that as the title of the page because that's good practice. Then here, for the purpose of this, because I'm about to complexify it, I just put a URL to an image, like I hard-coded it in there. Soon we'll replace that with dynamic thing. So it's got a background image, and that gets rendered in the background. And if you go down here, as you can see, it's got these areas here, these H1 tags they're called. And here we're just putting the title in this one, because that's just the title that we have of the thing. Then this get poster subtitle, get poster content body, and get poster content call to action. Okay? And so it's the same templating thing that we used before, except now we're putting it into HTML. Let's play with these things. I built them for the purpose of this presentation, so let's take a look at them. So I've got this motivational poster generator, which is, again, the one I showed you. Let's not play with this. Let's play with this one. Again, let's take a look at it. What's in here? User input. Oops. You guys know how that is. That's the poster topic. Generate text, return JSON. We've seen that. I'll come back to this generate image thing. Here's the generate asset thing that I was just showing you. It's this HTML document, and in various places here where it belongs, we are injecting dynamically injecting our content here. Okay? And then so let's run it, right? And so I can say open published agent, and again, you can say anything you want here. And so we can say next. And this thing is running here. It went and this one, sorry. There's a thing in here that's also doing is generating an image. So I added to it, here, let me come back to this. I added to it another block, which is a generate image block. And a generate image block, again, is actually really easy to configure. I'm just giving it from poster content the image prompt. You remember here, we asked that we have an image prompt in our JavaScript object called poster content. And the model, when it generated the poster content here, also generated that image prompt. And now we're taking this image prompt and we're saying get poster content, image prompt. And then we're putting that in as the prompt to the image model. And also I'm putting in here, make sure there's no text in the image, because sometimes I'll create an image, it's got a bunch of text. That'll be weird because we're going to overlay all of our text on it. And so we didn't want that. And so I say, make sure it's got no text. The output of this is not going to be an image. The output of this kind of a call is a URL to the image. So it generates the image, stores it on the web, and returns back to us the URL. And so we're going to call that output variable the image URL. Here we get to choose what model. So we have different models for generating images than for generating text. I chose GPT-1 image. And then here in the generate asset block, instead of having a static image, see right here, this is the format, background image colon, this is HTML URL in parentheses. And here we're just injecting that image URL, okay? Image URL. It's not a JSON object. It's just a a sample value, image URL, right? and from that we get this. And so this image was just generated dynamically. If we run it again, it's going to be a different image, even if we did the same problem, because every time an image gets generated, it's a different image. Let's actually go ahead and do that again. And I want to show you again something else. If you right-click on this thing here, on any of these agents, you get another menu. One of the items in the menu is New Run. And there's another item in the menu, which is Show Debugger. Remember, I want to show you guys this debugger that's also available right here, that you can see exactly what's happening behind the scenes in this debugger. This is a really important interface. We use it all the time when you're building agents. Advanced, we use the debugger, so we can see all the things that are happening step by step. You can also see it here, so I'll show it to you here. So the agent has started. It started because we loaded it. Run started, and we're running the main flow. It's also setting a variable here automatically called current date that we can use. And it knows this is the date. We don't need any of this. It knows who I am as a user. And so all of that is in here. There's nothing here that you should care about. For now, it's waiting for an action. And so here we're going to say, again, success is around the corner. And I'm going to say next. And you see, we see it on the left and we see it over here. What's happening? And so it says setting poster topic to successes around the corner. Let me see if I can make this bigger for you. Actions completed. Then it's sending a background message, means it's sending it to a model. And you see there it is. It's saying poster topic, generate content for the promotional poster about the topic, right? And so if I expand this out, see, it's a different background. Return JSON. So this is our prompt. And then it unpacked that. See, it says topic, and then in the middle of topic and end topic, it unpacked it and said success is around the corner, right? And so now the message that it's sending to the model is topic, success is around the corner, generate content from promotional poster about topic, return JSON. And then it says respond with JSON, and then it gives it the template, the example response that we set, title strong. This is what gets sent to the model. In this case, we chose Claude 3.5 Haiku. And then it went, and what it got back from the model, the return from the model, was indeed what we asked for, which is what? Here's our JSON object that the model returned based on our template. And our object has a title, and it came up with successes just around the corner, kind of like what I said, but like each time it generates it differently. The subtitle, your breakthrough moment awaits, blah, 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 and then generates these things. And by the way, here is the URL of the image that it generated that we put into, there's the image. It lives on the web at this URL. And we put it in the background. And then because HTML allows us to composite, to overlay things on top of one another, it put it in the background. It made this hover, by the way. So HTML allows hovering and many other things. And that's how we did that. Okay? And so once you understand JSON and you're not afraid of JSON, and you get to not be afraid of HTML, I was going to show you how to do this. Watch this. How are you guys doing, by the way? I keep going. Maybe I'll stop here before blowing your minds more of like how to get the AI model to generate the HTML for you by you just typing some words and saying, I want this, and giving it a JSON object. It says, I got it. I'll generate the HTML for you. You can cut and paste into this, but I'll stop here for a moment. Okay. One, thank you for being my cohort of this like really weird class that I jumped around, I think, a bunch. But what you guys got here, I'm not sure whether you know it or not. I'm certain Lewis knows it because he's been all in nooks and crannies of these things and some others. But if you are new to this, you may not realize. But what you learned here were a lot of pretty advanced topics that we haven't sort of taught very much before. People have had to figure it out from documentation. If you didn't get all of them, again, that's okay. You can go watch some of the other master classes we've done that are a little bit more structured maybe and get there and then come back to this and rewatch that and you'll realize, oh, wow, now I'm much more capable than I would have been only watching those other classes. Those other classes we've done lacked this sort of depth inside of these kinds of things. And so hopefully, again, for those that have watched those prior classes, that's what I was trying to get to. Okay, yeah, I'm going to pause here. Any questions, anything you guys want me to revisit? Any, criticisms or anything else? Or any questions maybe, Louis, that you may have seen in comments so far?
Most of the people are just saying you did a great job, Dimitri, in explaining JSON and these more advanced concepts. If you do have questions, feel free to raise your hand. I see Norbert has his hand raised. Welcome.
Can I add something? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
This is really. I used to do things with JSON, and I forgot that. So this was a real nice refreshment course. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I would like to go back to something you talked before, Jason, about rec. If I upload data in my model, where are these data stored? Can I decide it myself, or does Mind Studio offer a place or dedicated place?
Yeah, so again, it depends on how the data is stored. If you put data into a display image block and say save to variable, that data is stored on our servers using the display image block, stored on our servers, encrypted, gets unencrypted when it comes back for processing. So that gets stored in basically primarily AWS is our cloud, the Amazon cloud. If your data is stored in a Google Doc and you're fetching it in real time when your agent runs, then your data is stored in your own instance of Google Docs. You're getting it from there, or the web, or a database. I didn't show you, like you could connect to a relational database or a document database or like any other place. So like it can be stored where you control it, or it could be stored in places. If you vectorize it, meaning if you're using a vector database that we didn't dive deeply into, we use a service called Zilliz, and which is a cloud for a vector database called Milvus. Really popular vector database, and this is a cloud provider that we use to do that. And so there it gets vectorized and chunked and stored in Zilliz's cloud.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Arun, did you have a question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
So I've been using on and off the platform, and I'm able to create, with these sessions, getting a lot of knowledge on how to create, but they're only good for my own projects. My question is, if I want to convert some of these into a paying business, is this a good platform? What resources and help do you offer to convert this into my own website, which is using Mind Studio behind the scene, things like that?
Yeah, so these agents that you are creating, when you hit publish, what are they? They are web applications. And so they live in the AWS cloud. They all have a unique URL. And so you can access them, as I showed earlier, from any desktop browser, a mobile browser, API, etc. If you want to take the agent that you've built and then put it on your own website, you can. We allow you to do that. That's called embedding. And so you can take that agent and you can embed it in your own website. If you wanted to put that page where you're embedding it behind the paywall, you said make it into a business, so you want to have some kind of a paywall in front of it, you can do that. We don't provide the paywall, but there's plenty of ways you can have a paywall done. And then And so, yeah, you can absolutely, in fact, there are people doing it that are restricting access to one or many even AI agents behind paywalls. And so you absolutely can't turn it into a business.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? Okay, guys. Well, awesome. So I think we started at 9, right? Let's see. I'll check my my calendar.
Sorry, Dimitri. Nirmal, did you have a question? I see you're physically
Oh,
raising your hand.
go ahead.
Uh, uh, can we have a system for automatic follow-up of tasks through WhatsApp?
So sorry, you want to create a WhatsApp bot and then have that
for automatic task follow-up of, say, a lot of persons?
you can. You need to, we don't have a native connector to WhatsApp. But there are a number of ways that you can get that kind of a connector built, and you can absolutely take a Mind Studio agent and with this third-party connector, connect it to WhatsApp and have your agent do all of the intelligent things to do
All
it.
right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So Luis and I in half an hour are going to be teaching another class, this one to Stanford University students, virtually like this. And so that one is going to be a different kind of class. So I still have, time if you guys have more questions. Otherwise, I'll take a break and rest up for our Stanford one.
I have a quick question. So right now, whatever you've shown, but let's say we are building the agents. So one I want to do is a PDF with illustrations with the story around it. But if I don't know some of this, like what's the best way? Should I just email support when we have, if I'm stuck or things like that? Or do you have another option?
We have a community
Okay.
that you can join. It's free. It's a forum. You can ask questions there. We have a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group where you can
Okay.
ask questions. Yeah, so there's a lot. We have a whole bunch of integration partners that are experts that have been trained and certified that are available to help you. They typically charge for it, but certainly you can engage them and they can help you get unstuck. So there's a bunch of ways to do it. And again, listen, even though we touched upon many things here, we've covered very little of like the capabilities of the platform. Like we didn't build any browser extension buttons. We didn't build anything using APIs or webhooks or email. So you can easily create agents that you can then copy on an email. And then that's the way to trigger the agent, or running on a schedule, that every day or every minute or every whatever interval, this thing just runs and does something. There's like many ways and many types of agents you can build. Again, this one I mostly wanted to sort of cover some places that I've seen people get stuck and not sort of grok some fundamental things. So this, in some ways, this is like, should be a prerequisite to the other master classes, but I'll get better as I give this class again. Okay, I see another hand raised. Yeah,
Hi, Dimitri.
hello.
So I had one question around, can these agents also interact with any other web applications right now? So if I have to use any other tool and make them interact with them.
Absolutely. These things can be called via API or can call any API. And so
Okay.
they can integrate with every application imaginable.
Okay. I just need the API for that application and
Yeah,
there'll be a way to connect it in the like configurator.
that's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, we have an HTTP request block that allows you to call an API. And again, this thing can expose APIs of its own and webhooks. All right, guys. Well, look, thanks so much for hanging out here all this time and nerding out. I appreciate you letting me practice on you. And hopefully this didn't confuse you. Hopefully it helps you a bit. Please feel free and follow me on LinkedIn. Connect with us. James, I see your hand. I'll get to you as well. Please feel free and connect to us. You know, we post a bunch of things, and so you can kind of keep track of like new things we're launching. We move very quickly in launching new capabilities. This is a really exciting space. All of you are here early. Like in the grand scheme of things, you know, the vast majority of your colleagues, you know, can barely spell AI, but you now have the capabilities of building these powerful AI agents. By the way, if you work at a company, I don't care like what your role is in the company, if you can develop this skill and show up at your company and start building custom tools for your fellow employees, I don't know of any better way of like, you know, career advancement in today's world than that. There is no more important skill. It's not an MBA. It's not a degree in computer science. It's the ability to do practical AI, to do applied AI. That's what you're learning here. And so like, please do that. We've seen people, you know, that are users of Mind Studio who've dramatically advanced their career simply by learning this skill and starting to do it for their company. And then they get tapped on the shoulder saying, congrats, you're the new head of AI digital transformation. Me? Yeah, you. Because no, nobody's an expert here. You guys are now more experts than anybody else you know. By the way, most of the people on LinkedIn that are sort of flexing with like, here's this prompt or here's that prompt, those aren't experts. Those are just people trying to get attention and grow their audience on LinkedIn. If anybody's trying to sell you on like, oh, here's a magic prompt, that's silly. But if you can, again, understand this thing that I'm pointing at here, what you've got is the capability of building really, really powerful, practical, scalable applications in automation. You're the expert, okay? So remember that, especially if you can grok this JSON stuff, then you're the real expert. Okay, James.
Hey, thanks. It's really interesting because like I did an HTML1 class and I remember learning some of these like initial tags, and it's fun to see stuff circle back around to like using some of that really old way of like communicating.
HTML has never gone away. HTML.
Yeah, but it's so cool that it's still like one of the main ways. But my question is, so I have like a GPT account for Teams because I do research at the university that requires to have the data be walled off. And so is there a way to like use my Teams GPT API to do the actual call to the LLM instead of using the APIs that you guys already have in place to do the call to the model?
There is, it's only available on our enterprise account. And so like it wouldn't be for an individual, but if the university wants to do that, we can provide that, and that's straightforward to do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's also important to note that none of our models are used in, like the data is not used to train the models other than DeepSeek and Cohere. So if you are building on Mind Studio, you can use the other models and the data won't be used in any sort of training for the LLMs.
Okay, I'm curious on, and this is something I guess I'll connect with you guys separately of how that would work with like the human subjects review process, just because I can show the certification from my Teams account that says that you've paid for this and any data being contained in here is only being used on the server. So I know that they'll have some documentation requirements, but that's probably something I can reach out to you guys more
Yeah, that's
directly
simple.
about.
Yeah. So I think Luis's
Okay.
point is super important. Let me just reiterate. So we don't have any models of our own. Mind Studio doesn't have any models. We connect to all of these popular model providers, and the way we connect to them is via API. And when you connect to these model providers via API, in their API terms of service, they explicitly state that they do not keep this data and use it for training. Okay. So as long as you trust the cloud And these clouds are run by, again, Amazon and Google and Meta and all. If you trust the cloud, then you're good to go. You might need, as James said, some documentation for your own paperwork, but there's like no implementation. There's no technological thing. They're not being used for that. All of the model providers we support explicitly commit to that, state that, except for two. And that's what Luis mentioned, and that is Cohere and DeepSeek. Those are the only two that don't state explicitly that they don't use it for training. And so just be sensitive to that. But other than that, you can be, assured that as long as you trust the cloud, that your data is fine. Stan?
Just to follow on with what James asked, I'm also at an educational institution, so we're very aware of data moving back and forth. And as James said, if you have your own individual account with the models, they say that the data isn't used for training, but in your situation with a shared API across, say, all of us here, is there any data migration or data bleed through?
No.
Okay.
No, everything is isolated. So it goes through sort of, in a sense, not a big fat pipe, but you can imagine it as a big fat pipe API to that. It's all segmented. None of it is mixed ever. And certainly, and they don't store it and train. And so there's like no bleeding that's even remotely possible.
That's back to the models, but I'm talking about from your side. Because if you're using like Zilla's for data storage, is there any chance of?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Everything is, it's called multi-tenant. Everything is multi-tenant isolated. Like there's no ability at all for these things to cross between accounts.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. By the way, we've got a bunch of first of all, educational institutions that are teaching it. So BYU is using it. Harvard Business School is teaching now for a year. In fact, I'm about to parachute on the 21st again via Zoom into a HBS class. Later today, we're doing Stanford. I'm teaching a big course in the summertime at Stanford, Stanford Adjacent, part of the alumni group there. Furman in North Carolina is using this. There's like a bunch of educational institutions, college in Miami. So if you guys need any help, like we're excited about higher education. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Stan. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us again. If you want more of these like classes, go to our YouTube channel. There's a whole section there. This one's going to be up there soon. You can watch the others. The next one coming up is on Thursday. It's today, Tuesday. It's all a big blur. For some reason, I thought it was Monday all of a sudden. On Thursday at 11:30 Pacific, we have a, sorry, not 11:30 Pacific. I'm wrong. When is that Masterclass? Oh, no, sorry. I think it's, somebody help. Next week? Those Thursdays? Danielle's still here.
Which one?
Check with us. The Danielle class.
Next Thursday.
It's next Thursday.
Wait.
No, I think it's this.
No, this Thursday.
I don't see it in my calendar here. Okay, keep an eye on it. We've got another masterclass coming up. It's going to be about these agents that we've built, again, in our agent store that you can use free of charge. They are for biz dev teams and corp dev teams. So if you're doing any kind of like partnership and things like that, we've built a suite of agents that are awesome. And again, we built them for ourselves to use internally for our efforts. And we're just open sourcing them and letting you guys use them. And so Danielle is going to be leading that class and I'll be joining as well. And so feel free and join us there. All right, guys, thanks so much. Be well. Take care.